You know, some stories have it all. A powerful politician, a deadly, fast-acting poison, and a murder conviction that, believe it or not, left the biggest question completely unanswered. Today, we're diving deep into a case that sits right at that dangerous intersection of politics and crime. And it really all starts with one question.
At the very heart of this entire story is this one central, pretty chilling question. Was George Thuo, a former member of parliament, murdered because of what he was about to say in one of the highest-stakes international trials of the decade?
So this whole story, it doesn't begin in a fancy courtroom or at a political rally. No, it starts in this super casual, everyday atmosphere of a local bar. Okay, so try to imagine the scene. It's Sunday, November 17th, 2013. George Thuo is at this place called Club Porkies in Thika, Kenya, just watching a Formula One race with some friends. He's drinking a beer, chatting, a totally normal Sunday. Then suddenly, he feels intensely hot, and just a few minutes later, he collapses. He gets rushed to a nearby nursing home, but it's too late. He's pronounced dead, just like that. A sudden, really shocking end for such a public figure.
Well, it turns out this was no heart attack. The autopsy results were absolutely definitive, and honestly horrifying. Thuo died from acute poisoning. A super potent pesticide had caused this catastrophic internal bleeding. So the crucial point here is, this wasn't just a sudden death, this was murder. And the investigation was about to uncover a really, really deep political backstory.
To even begin to understand a possible motive here, we have to understand who George Thuo was and the world he was moving in.
So Thuo was a pretty big deal. He started out in the transport sector and eventually founded his own really successful bus company, City Hopper. In 2007, he basically rode that wave of success right into politics and became the member of parliament for Juja. Now, he did lose the seat later, but he was still a very well-connected and influential guy.
But here's where things get really complicated. Thuo was also a key witness in the ICC case against then-President Uhuru Kenyatta. The president was accused of crimes against humanity following Kenya's violent post-election period back in 2007. I mean, this wasn't some minor case. This was a trial that had the power to shape the entire future of the country.
And this is where the story just splits into two completely different narratives. Publicly, everyone thought Thuo was going to be a defense witness, testifying for Uhuru Kenyatta, basically saying the violence was all spontaneous. But the ICC prosecutor, they painted a very different picture. They alleged that Thuo was actually an accomplice who helped execute the attacks, using his own transport company to move gangs and channel payments. So which was it? A friendly witness or a man who knew where all the bodies were buried?
Okay, let's zoom right back into the night of the murder and try to piece together what happened minute by fateful minute.
So the setting is Club Porkies. It's just a typical Sunday night, friends gathered to watch a race. Thuo's drinking his usual, a Tusker light beer. And this is crucial. As the police would find out later, the club had no CCTV cameras, a fatal blind spot in the whole investigation.
Now look at this timeline. At 8 p.m., Thuo gets there. His first two beers are brought to him unopened and then opened right there at the table, standard stuff. But at 9 p.m., a woman named Vanessa Watahi shows up. She buys him a third beer, but this one is opened at the counter and she personally carries it over to him. Just 15 minutes later, he's complaining about being hot. 10 minutes after that, he's on the floor. The timing, it's just undeniable.
And these were the people at his table. The club owner, a former campaign manager, and the woman who bought him that final drink, Vanessa Watahi. They were his companions in his final moments, and every single one of them would soon become a murder suspect.
So what happened next wasn't some swift resolution. Nope, it was a decade-long legal battle.
That's right. It took 10 grueling years for the courts to finally reach a verdict. Think about that. A full decade of uncertainty for Thuo's family and for the people accused of his murder.
The murder weapon was identified as a pesticide called karate. And the choice of weapon? Well, it speaks volumes about the killer's intent. It's pale yellow, so it would blend right in with the beer. It has a faint odor, so it's easily missed. And most importantly, it's fast-acting. Forensics found traces of it not just in his body, but also on the vest he took off when he started feeling so hot.
The trial itself was a classic battle of circumstantial evidence. The prosecution's whole case was that the people at the table had the opportunity, and the poison's speed meant it had to have happened at the club. Meanwhile, the defense fired back, pointing out that no poison was ever actually found at the scene. They tried to suggest he was poisoned earlier, even trying to cast suspicion on Thuo's own wife.
So after 10 long years, the verdict came in. All 6 individuals, the 5 at the table, plus the waitress who served him his first beers, were found guilty. The judge basically concluded that all that circumstantial evidence, when you wove it all together, was strong enough to prove they had all acted together to murder George Thuo.
And the sentence for that decade-old crime, a crime that literally shook the political landscape, 15 years in prison.
So, we've got a verdict, we've got a sentence. Case closed, right? Well, not exactly. The biggest piece of the whole puzzle was still missing.
And this, right here, is the core of the mystery that still hangs over this case. The prosecution, they managed to get a conviction, but they never, ever answered the question, why? Why would a club owner, a campaign manager, and a few friends conspire to kill a powerful politician? What was in it for them? The answer might just lie in this chilling piece of testimony from Paul Shekiboyo, the club owner himself. He stated that in the days before his death, Thuo was really worried, specifically about the ICC case. He told Boyo he didn't know what would happen when it was all over. And this brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it?
And just consider this for context. Before those ICC cases were eventually dropped, more than 13 people, all witnesses with inside information, were brutally killed. George Thuo wasn't an isolated incident. He was part of a deadly, terrifying pattern.
Which leaves us with this final, haunting question. 6 people were convicted of the murder, sure, but were they the masterminds? Or were they just pawns, paid or forced to deliver a poisoned beer by some far more powerful, shadowy figure who had everything to lose from what George Thuo might say? A puppet master who, to this very day, has never faced justice.